Welcome to the question of the day. Today's question is from my friend Dale in Louisiana. And Dale asked, I just had the best 2025 of my career. Now, my January and my February have been the worst since 2021. What do I do? Great question. Sales it's a scary thing. One minute you are on top of the world, and the next minute you are at the bottom of the barrel. I remember when I started in sales, I started on fire. So there was this trainee program that you went through. So for the first 3 months, you were technically selling, but you were also attending these trainings and you were designated as a salesperson trainee for the first 3 months. Now the company had 28 locations and they did this thing called the matrix. And that was the top 10% every month were listed in the matrix in regard to sales. And so this is like out of like 180 salespeople. And so top 10% each month. But then each quarter, the top 10% got like a fancy dinner and a gift card, and dinner was with the owner and stuff like that, right? Like, so it was pretty exciting. And now when I started sales right away, like I honestly, I didn't know what I was doing, but whatever I was doing was working because those first 3 months I was in the top 10% every month, and I made that first quarterly dinner. I thought of myself as like das Wunderkind, like I was the kid, like I could do this, and this was my calling, right? Then month 4 rolled around. I was no longer a trainee. I was an actual salesperson now. And I had set a very high bar. And I proceeded to have my worst sales month ever. Ever. Like it never got that bad again. It was the worst month ever. And I remember, like, as hard as I was on myself, I remember month 3 kind of walking around like royalty, right? Like the managers loved me, like the other salespeople were maybe a little jealous. Like I was okay with that, but like the managers were all great to me, and this one manager in particular, I don't even remember what it was, but I something happened on a sale or not sale, whatever, and he just laid into me, and I was like, what? What? Like my feelings were hurt. He'd never talked to me like that before. And I kind of went back to my desk and licked my wounds and I thought about it for a second. Later I came up to him and I said, I think I figured this sales thing out. It's not what I did for you yesterday. It's what can I do for you today? And he smiled and he pointed at me and he said, "Yep, that's sales in a nutshell. Like it can be a turbulent ride. You're riding high, having the best 2025 of your career, and then all of a sudden, you have the worst January, February since 2021. So I feel for you. I feel for you. So, first thing I would dive into is, are we doing the process, right? Back to the process. So, looking at our defined process, looking at our scorecard that ties into our process, applying that to our sales calls that we're running, and are we executing the process? Make sure we're doing that. Sales leader is riding along. And so, getting a second set of eyes on this that they can see that we're executing the process because they're going to identify blind spots. They're going to see things that we can't see. And so check there first. Are we still doing the process? But then from there, there's some specific areas that I would dive into. The first being our mindset. 90% of sales struggles are in our own head. 40% of statistics are made up on the spot. So I don't know. I don't know if it's actually 90%, but a great deal of sales struggles are in our own head. I feel like in my experience on coaching calls and working with salespeople and even my own head, 9 times out of 10, the challenges are in our own head. Now, that same instance, after I got my tongue lashing for whatever it was that I did or didn't do in month 4 of my sales career, I had a manager that pulled me aside, and he was fantastic. And he explained this concept to me. He said, Loa always wins. I was like, what the heck is Loa? Is that a name? Loa stands for the law of averages. Law of averages. Sales are going to go up, sales are going to come down. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride. Now, the better process you have, the tighter that's going to be. You're not going to see these big swings up and down. Usually, if I see big swings up and down, that means we don't have a very good process or we're not sticking to that process. But usually, even with a tight process, you're going to see some ups, you're going to see some downs, right? But the law of averages is always going to take over. Now, there is going to be those times where all of a sudden, like you just tank. You don't know why. But a seasoned salesperson is going to remember Loa always wins. If I have a defined process, a process that's proven with data that this process works, and I can execute that process, that's where I need to focus is that process. Because I know even when all of a sudden I tank, I'm a week in and I haven't even gotten a sale yet, no, stick to that process because you know that process is going to right itself. You will get sales. It will come back. Okay. The worst thing you can do in that situation is panic and start changing everything. Because that's what we want to do when we don't get sales. If we go 1 day, 2 day, 3 days without a sale, stretching out to a week, all of a sudden we want to blow everything up and change everything. That's the worst thing you can do. Best thing you can do is get back to that proven process and stick to that process. It's just like hitters in baseball. They go through hitting slumps, right? When they get into a hitting slump, the last thing they want to do is completely change their batting style, right? They're going to go back to that process. They're going to look at that process. They're going to compare game film from when they were hitting to not hitting. What am I doing? Where's my hand placement, my foot placement? How are my hips turning? Like, where's my elbow? Like, they're looking at all that stuff, right? And they're getting a hitting coach, a second set of eyes to make sure we're still doing the process. So stick to that process. Loa always wins. Now, what do we do about this mindset problem? Like, how do we maintain a mindset problem? Because it's easier said than done. It all ties back to self-image, who we are, who we see ourselves as, because we revert to that. I'll give a couple of examples here. Occasionally, I golf. I don't golf very often, though, which is kind of like weird, right? Like, I'm a sales coach, but I don't golf that much. And when I do golf, I stink. Like, I'm bad. Usually, my score is about 100. I don't know that I've ever gotten down to double digits. I'm usually about 100, 104, 106, something like that. But over the years, that's become my self-image. Like, I just expect when I go golfing, it's going to be 100, and magically it's always 100, right? But there's these games, once in a while, I'll play a game where I will overperform on the front nine. Like, I'll shoot like a 45 on the front nine. And I start doing the math in my head, like 45 on the front nine, 45 on the back nine, that's 90. This is going to be the game. This is going to be the one where I break 100. It's going to happen. And even if I'm wrong by 10 strokes, like as long as I'm like, 99, that's still breaking 100. And so what happens though? My game falls apart on the back nine. I end right back up at like 106. It happens the other way too. I'll go out and I will have the worst round of my life. I'll shoot like a 55 on the front nine. And I'm thinking, ugh, if I keep up, it's going to be 110. That's worse. And magically, I somehow pull out a 40. 100 again. It's my self-image. That's I gravitate towards. You see this in other areas too. This isn't just a golf thing. This is like dating, right? There's a self-image of who you are and like what a relationship looks like with you. So if you have a low self-image, low self-esteem, low confidence, right? Like you feel like you don't deserve somebody good. And so when somebody like that has that low self-image and they do start dating a really good guy or a great gal, like what usually happens? They self-sabotage. Somehow they sabotage that relationship because it causes anxiety. It's conflicting with my self-image. This isn't me. This isn't who I am. And so somehow we sabotage it. And it happens the other way. And personally, like I have a daughter. This is really and a son, but this is really what I'm working on. I'm working on building their self-confidence. I want their self-confidence, their self-image so high that someday when they start dating, I don't got to worry about losers coming around that they're going to date because these losers are going to be below what their self-image is, where their confidence is, and they're going to select them out themselves. And I won't have to be dad on the front porch with the shotgun, right? And so if it doesn't match with their self-image, they're going to select it out because it causes anxiety, right? And so you see this in dating as well. You see it in prison. There's a story of a gentleman that spent most of his youth in some kind of youth correctional facility, and then as an adult, got into more shenanigans and spent most of his adult life in prison too. And then he got out of prison as a middle-aged to older man now, and first thing he did was rob a convenience store. And then when he was in front of the judge and the judge asked him, like, you finally had your freedom. What are you doing? The guy said, I just want to go home. He used the word home because that was his self-image. He saw that as home. That's all he ever knew. And so anything outside of that caused anxiety. Same thing happens in sales. Watch your number one salesperson. That number one, the salesperson that's consistently the best. Watch them not be number one some month. Somebody comes along and has a better month. And what do you think's going to happen the following month? After they get bumped down to number two, what's going to happen the following month? I'll tell you what's going to happen. They are going to move heaven and earth to be that number one again. Somehow they are going to be number one again because they see themselves as number one. That's their self-image. That's their identity. And not being that causes great anxiety. And so somehow we are going to come back to that. And so how do you change your mindset? Well, the answer is you flood your brain, right? Everything around you has to tell you who you are, who that self-image is. And at first, this feels like you're lying to yourself. You feel like a fraud. You have the worst imposter syndrome possible. You feel like a fraud. But you have to surround yourself with language and visuals of who you are. In this case, Dale, you just had the best 2025 of your career. That's who you are. That's not even a flash in the pan. That's an entire year. But we have this self-doubt creeping in of January and February and like, is that who I am? Well, I got a whole year's worth of data that says that's not you. You are not Mr. January, Mr. February. You're Mr. 2025. But we got to believe that. And when we believe that, it'll come back. It will. Now, a couple of things to think about with this, right? So like I said, check the process. Make sure we're still executing the process. Focus on our mindset. That's number two. Number three, if we are getting to an extended period like this, like I said earlier, a bad day, 3 days, a week, 2 months is getting kind of long, right? And so I would really like make sure that In addition to mindset, I'm looking at that process piece that I'm executing that process piece because it seems to me something may have changed. 2 months is a long time. And so those ride alongs are going to be vital to getting a second set of eyes on this to see what's happening. The other things you want to eliminate outliers. And I'm putting this at the very end because usually this isn't the case. And I almost don't want to give it airtime, but eliminate blaming other things, right? It's very easy for us to start pointing fingers and say, well, it's the leads, it's the customers, it's our competitor, it's the economy. Like it's very easy to point our finger at those things, but usually it's not those things. But even if it was those things, let's say it was the economy. Let's say the economy is crap and nobody's buying anymore, which it isn't. That's not what studies are showing right now. But even if it was, you don't control any of that. Nothing you can do about it. Okay. So you'd have to think about, what do I control? What can I control? I control my process. I control the value I build in myself, in my company, in my solutions that I'm delivering to my customers. And from there, you have to be in competition with the competition, and you have to be the best, and you got to stay the best. And so eliminate those outliers. It's probably not those, but even if it is, not much you can do about it. It's going to revert back to focus on our process. Make sure we're executing the process. Use that scorecard, get a ride along, and focus on that mindset. Remember who you are. That's today's question of the day. If you're enjoying question of the day, follow, share, and give a rating. Question of the day is on major streaming platforms. If you have a question, reach out to me either on social media or email. Both are going to be listed below in the show description. Let's get your question answered. And if you're an X-Star member, schedule a call with me and let's address this one-on-one. Let's get very specific to your situation. I'm Coach Chris. We'll see you tomorrow.